for Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. I'm your host, Jim Crinity. And today we're going to actually talk about college football. Can you believe that we're just over a month away from the start of the 2022 regular season? I believe the first slate of games is on September 1st, which, yeah, according to the calendar, is a week from Monday. Technically, if you want to go by letter of the law here, we're looking at 5 weeks from Saturday. But yesterday, Big Ten Media Day took place, and naturally, all the coaches, Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Kirk Ferentz, Pat Fitzgerald, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all gave their introductory seasonal press conferences. And naturally, a lot of coaches were asked about the expansion of the Big Ten coming up in 2023 with the addition of USC and UCLA, and also the potential addition of teams even further than that. There's been talk of Washington, there's been talk of Stanford, um, but there's also been talk of Oregon or any two of those three. But Kirk Ferentz, who is the longest tenured coach in all of college football right now, let alone the Big Ten. And quite honestly, I brought it up in the blog post that's accompanying this. He is to Big Ten football as Tom Izzo is to Big Ten basketball. When they speak, you tend to listen, and about 98% of the time, you tend to agree with what they say, just because they know how to run a program properly. You never see anything really going on with Ferentz's program, and let's also remember Ferentz was um, the most touted college coach to jump to the NFL before Herb jumped, and everyone else who's been courted over the years. But his concern is with what's going on with uh, the expansion, which is also leading to where does college football go from here? Because as we've discussed on this blog and on the Wise Guy show before, and we're going to have an update on that here at the end of the video. The college the college football national championship at the Division I level is the only championship that the NCAA does not hand out. That's actually in the hands of, it was the Bowl Championship Series, and now it's the College Football Playoff Committee. But let's also remember, they've never had one that any of us can remember, because it was always either the AP national champion or the coaches poll, or you get a split national champion. It's the my first instance that I can actually remember as a big time college football fan was 1991. Between Notre Dame and Miami, and between Miami and Washington, um, and Notre Dame. There was Notre Dame and Colorado. I want to say even just a couple of years before that, and the logical thing would be just to actually have them, go at it in a one-game playoff, and it never really materialized until we got the college football playoff of coming up on what, 7-8 years now. It's got to be actually coming up on a 10-year anniversary. We've had the Bowl Championship Series giving us a pretty much a de facto national champion, or about the closest thing to a national championship game now for over a decade. I'm glad to see that my Florida Gators have got a couple of those. I'm not gonna argue with that, and the fact that Ohio State only has one in there. So got to take my shot where I can. But Ferentz said, there a quote, "We're in a very precarious place. There's a lot of vagueness and a lot of uncertainty. We don't have a firm structure." End quote. I'm saying end quote right now because he continued on with that. But for respect to the journalists at the media day, which naturally I was not, being kind of a um, you know, uh, sideline bloggist, so to speak. I'm going to let them, run with the rest of that here. And he's completely right. What if this gets out of hand to where we've only got 3 or 4 super conferences, and you've basically alienated some of your smaller conferences, your MACs, your WACs, your uh, your I can't even say Big Sky because they're Division 2. Um, it's to the point anymore where if the Pac-12 and the Big 12 don't merge up with some of their powerhouse teams leaving, and they don't join up, could they end up being something of this nature, like a whack, um, like 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 the Mid American Conference, some of the other conference, like the Big East when they still actually had um, football, and I know they do for Division 1 AA. Um, but again, it's some of these you know smaller type conferences that their conference champion is yeah, they're going to play in a decent bowl getting towards New Year's, but it's not going to be a New Year's Six bowl, or it's not going to be a marquee ESPN game. It'll be on ESPN or ESPN2, but it's going to be the week of Christmas or leading up to that. But I hope you know where I'm going with that, and I'm sorry for sounding a little long winded with that here. But the idea that um, there is no governing body, meaning, would it mean that could the um, could the entire college football landscape um, possibly get a governing body to where it could be thought of as its own entity, to where um, they could potentially break clean away. I apologize, just making a little note here. And could they completely break away from the NCAA? Um, and especially with the name, image, likeness here, could that also be could that also run hand in hand here if Ferentz and some of the other coaches like Pat Fitzgerald, who actually had comments that agreed with Ferentz. Um, Fitzgerald says the game on the field has never been better. Once you walk off the field, it's never been more chaotic. End quote. Um, he's completely and totally right. This isn't even 5 years ago when you know when we were first thinking of expanding the playoff to 8 teams. Now, could you actually, if you expand the playoff to 8 teams, 16, 32, for whatever reason, now you're actually having schools potentially run the table and play almost as many games as an NFL regular season, to where could it even be something where if they broke completely away from the NCAA and they're getting NIL licenses, could you even have some of these players, or even college football players in general, not be considered student athletes anymore? Could they be going to school, but it could be something that they're almost kind of being paid and almost thought of as professionals um, in this aspect, because they're not overseen by an amateur status board like the NCAA has been for over 100 years now. Could it also mean that your USFL and your XFLs are really not the breeding grounds for almost kind of like a developmental system for the NFL? Could it actually be that college football is truly what that body's going to be, to where if they're deemed no longer amateurs, could it be something that says, hey, we like this kid out of Oklahoma, we're going to pluck him off Saturday, and can we get him ready to play next Sunday? Um, and then just maybe like they can go back to their schools, or something kind of like how the NHL does when players get drafted from some of the Canadian junior leagues, that they're allowed to play 10 games, I think it is, at the NHL level, and then they can be returned to their junior teams, and that's not including preseason games, um, or exhibition, or you know exhibition games that aren't considered on the preseason schedule, like or like against some overseas teams in like a Dutch league or a German league or something of that nature. Um, but the this is a very, very slippery slope, and I'm glad that Ferentz and Fitzgerald kind of came out and acknowledged it a little bit with the uncertainty, because of anybody that you're going to listen to in the Big Ten, you're probably not going to listen to Jim Harbaugh too much um, on this. And I'm not saying this, to try and bash Harbaugh, but we don't know how much time he's got invested really more with Michigan, because even though yes, he did finally, break the Ohio State schneid last season, his seat is still relatively warm, and who's to say he doesn't go up into Columbus and shock the world and beat the Buckeyes for a second year in a row in their home, in their house, and maybe want to take a shot at the next level, or go to an even bigger program. Maybe try his hand in as an SEC, or possibly be an heir apparent, because we know Nick Saban's not going to be at Alabama forever. Um, could it also be we're also not going to listen to Ryan Day because he's only got a couple of years at Ohio State. He doesn't have the forte nor the pedigree as a guy like a Ferentz or even a Pat Fitzgerald do. Yes, Ryan Day's a very good coach, but he, you know, he didn't even get to the Big Ten championship game last year, and the year before, where he actually was in the playoffs, it was all with Urban Meyer's players, because Meyer decided on a whim to jump to the NFL and fail after 8 games. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment box below. The next Wise Guys Sports Show is slated for, I want to say it is going to be August 13th. That we will actually be live on this very channel. It will be uncut, uncensored. We don't know if we don't know right now uh, if we're going to have any guests lined up, but we do already kind of have a slate of topics that we'd like to broach. The Major League Baseball trade deadline is actually coming up. The end of this week or very early next, and certainly you guys are going to want to go over to my partner Mike Martinez's channel, um, because he's going to have a baseball roundtable show with a whole host of guests, including our Wise Guys elite brother Alex from Row 7, and they're going to break down a lot of moves. So you're definitely going to want to check that one out. I'm not going to be a part of that one, but it's just going to be gearing up for after that show. We'll talk about that on the Wise Guys show. We're going to talk a little bit of we're definitely going to talk some Cleveland Browns now that the training camps have kind of opened. We're still waiting on the ruling on their quarterback, who still shall remain nameless for the time being, although we all know who is being talked about. We're going to have some Cavaliers news. We've also got a couple of other fun things in the pipe there. And don't forget, Labor Day weekend, we may not be doing a Wise Guys show per se, but the Wise Guys turn one, and we're definitely going to have a party, and you guys are all going to be invited out. So again, let me know what you guys think. Comment down below. Let me know, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Take care.